Welcome back to the Becoming Mindstrong podcast. My name is Rachel, and I am the founder and CEO of Mindstrong, where we have been helping peri and postmenopausal women not just heal their metabolisms, but understand how to keep them healthy for life. And, relevant to today's episode, not freak out about the scale for almost a decade now. Perhaps the most referenced podcast when we're working with a member inside Mindstrong Ignite, our signature 12-week program. Perhaps the most referenced podcast that we always come back to is, I think it was in my first 5 or 10, and it's called The Ultimate Mind Game, The Scale, What It Is or What It Isn't. And by popular request, this one actually came from my coaches. I was asked to do an episode that expands on that original episode. So in that original episode, we talk about what the scale is or isn't, how to use it so it stops messing with your head. In today's episode, I'm going to break it into 4 parts. In the first part, we're going to talk about that, what the scale is or isn't, so we have a good understanding so we can stop messing with our head. Number 2, we're going to talk about what impacts the scale. You're going to hear me say that fluctuations are normal. We're going to get much more in the weeds about that, and we're going to talk about what's impacting those normal fluctuations. Number 3, we will dive into if you are a worker-outer, how that's going to impact what you see on the scale. And then finally, we will wrap this episode up with how to use the scale so that it stops messing with your head. Check it out. Diet culture has brainwashed us to believe that the scale is the ultimate measure of success, right? If the scale is going up, I am gaining fat. If the scale is going down, I am losing fat. And one of the toughest pills for people to swallow, especially at this stage of life where we've been living life for a while now, is that is simply not true. I'm going to say that again. It is simply not true. What a scale does not measure is how much fat is on your body. That is not the only thing that it's measuring. Here's my favorite analogy for this that you may have heard me use before, and I want to take it and take one step deeper, okay? Let's say you go on the scale right now, and it says 180 pounds. You get off the scale. You chug 3 glasses of water. You get back on the scale. It now says 182. Did you just gain 2 pounds of fat by chugging those glasses of water? Or is it possible that what a scale is actually measuring, if we think about how a scale works, right? We step on it, it pushes down, and then the number on the scale goes up. Is it possible that what the scale is measuring is the force of gravity? So when we have more in our body, in this case water, there is more gravity being pushed down, and the scale number goes up. I think we can all agree that we did not gain 2-3 pounds of fat by chugging a couple glasses of water. We have more matter in our body pushing down on the scale, making that number go up. The scale, I'm going to say this until it's annoying, the scale does not solely measure fat on our body. That's point 1. Point 2, and this is one of the most important things that I can drive home, points 1 and 2. Even if you do this, and if you're not watching the video, I'm putting it in air quotes right now, even if you do this perfectly, in our world, the goal is never perfect. I would always rather someone do this 80% than 100%, because 80% is sustainable, 100% is a recipe for burnout, pun intended, and we're not going to stick with it. And if the point's to make it a sustainable lifestyle, 100% is not sustainable. Even if you were super type A and you hit your nutrition plan 100% every single day, guess what? You're not doing it perfectly, number 1. You've heard me talk about in past episodes, if you've listened before, nutrition labels can be up to 25% inaccurate. So we can drive ourselves nuts all day long. We're not doing it perfectly. Let's put all of that aside. Let's say you could do it perfectly. Let's say that if you got your macros, your carbs, fat, protein to 0, 0, 0 every day, not the goal, but let's say you did, and it wasn't a truth of the society in which we live that nutrition labels could be 25% inaccurate. We're going to pretend that both of those aren't factors here. The scale would still fluctuate, not a little bit, a lot, 1 to 6 pounds every single day. That's a big number, right? Hearing me say that might not sound that big, but I want you to visualize yourself. You've been doing the work. You've been getting your workouts in, right? You've been tracking your macros, quote unquote, perfectly in this hypothetical example. And then you get on the scale and it went up 4 pounds. If we have not thoroughly, pun intended, digested what the scale is or isn't, nobody is sticking with the path. Because a 4-pound increase overnight, of course, if we haven't done this work, our brain is going to go down the rabbit hole. This isn't working. What am I doing? I'm working so hard. I spent all this money. I'm spending all this time, and the scale's moving in the opposite direction. Hear my words. Write it on your bathroom mirror. Tattoo it on your forehead. Even if you do this quote unquote perfectly, putting aside the fact that there's no such thing, this scale is always going to fluctuate 1 to 6 pounds. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about, well, what do I do with the scale then, right? How do I know if it's working? We're getting there. For right now, let's talk about what impacts those fluctuations. And the answer is a lot of things. I'm going to give you a better answer than that. But I think a lot of times, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. We're going to talk about workouts after this, but a lot of us have heard the muscle weighs more than fat thing, right? I think a lot of times when women hear things like muscle weighs more than fat or the scale, a lot of things influence the scale fluctuations. We tend to think those are just things we say to make us feel better. They are not. Those sayings are sayings because they are science. This is capital T truth, right? If you're someone who's in, let's say, perimenopause, you haven't totally lost your cycle yet, but it's erratic. Your cycle is impacting the scale. For a lot of women, when they're on their cycle, that scale is going up closer to the 6-pound. That's how my body is because I'm in a perimenopausal stage right now. When I'm on my cycle, that scale is going up 5-6 pounds. And again, getting ahead of myself, but I know that I'm staying off the scale that week. For some women on the other side, it dips down. Hooray. And side note, if we're going to celebrate when it dips, we got to embrace what it is on the other side, right? It can't be a one-sided conversation. So if you are someone who still has your cycle is going to impact the scale significantly. Salt intake impacts the scale significantly. When our body is dehydrated or when there's a lot of salt in our body, it holds onto water, right? It's a survival mechanism. Our body needs water. If it's dehydrated, if there's lots of salt, we're going to hold onto water. Guess what? Let's go back to our original visualization of chugging glasses of water and getting on a scale. When your body's holding on to water, guess what the scale's going to do? If you do an intense workout the day before, the night before, the morning before, right? Intense workouts cause some inflammation in the body. We just pushed our muscles do what they can't yet do. We practice progressive overload. That leads to a bit of inflammation. This is why recovery is so important. We have to eat, we have to hydrate, we have to rest, maybe do some stretching, maybe take an Epsom salt bath. We're reducing inflammation in the body because guess what inflammation does? It makes the scale go up. Big meals. This kind of goes hand in hand with salt, but it's also a separate conversation on its own. Think about chugging those glasses of water, right? If you put more food in your body, guess what? There's more mass pushing down on the scale. There's more gravity taking a toll. And if that big meal was going out to eat, there's usually more salt in there. So big meals the night before, typically, not for everyone, not every time, but typically result in the scale going up, right? We could keep going. There is a laundry list. If you were someone who naturally has a lot of inflammation in your body, as we tend to in menopause is a time of life that as estrogen drops, inflammation naturally rises. That leads to the scale going up. If we've got some gut health issues, along with gut health issues come inflammation. With inflammation comes the scale going up. Real quickly, as a former teacher, differentiated learning is real. So if right now you're listening to this episode as a podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts, know that it also exists in video form on YouTube. Similarly, if you're watching me right now on YouTube, know that this episode also exists as a podcast on all the platforms. So however you take in information best, know that we've got you. The podcast exists both in podcast form and video form. We'll link both in the show notes below so you can learn however you learn best. Now, let's get back to the episode. Let's go down every rabbit hole, right? If you're not sleeping enough is raising your cortisol levels. High cortisol levels lead to more inflammation in the body. More inflammation in the body leads to the scale going up. Are you seeing the pattern here? There are a lot of factors that lead to the scale fluctuating 1 to 6 pounds every single day. Now, before we get to you're making the problem worse, Rachel. You're pushing on the bruise, and now I feel like all hope is lost. I promise it's not. We're going to talk about how to use the scale efficiently in a second here. Last point, point number 3 before we get to the how to use the scale. If you are a worker-outer, if you're someone who practices resistance training, weight training, pushing your muscles to do what they can't yet do. It's rare I use the word must. I'm going to use the word capital M must here. It is a must that we wrap our brain around this scale conversation, or you're never going to stick with it. For people who, especially menopausal women, who are into the workout part of this, there is a very solid chance. Again, I will never say everyone because it varies person to person. For most peri and postmenopausal women who are super into workouts, that scale may never change. I'm going to say that again because we need to hear it, and I'm not going to sugarcoat. That scale may never change. For most women in peri and postmenopause who are super into the workout parts, your body is going to do what we call a recomposition. We call it a recomp, which means you are going to see and feel all the changes. Your clothes are going to fit differently. If you're taking measurements, you're going to see it there. You're going to see your muscles tighten and tone. You're going to see and feel the impact everywhere except on the scale, because it is a capital T truth that muscle weighs more than fat. And I have seen so many women drive themselves bananas because they're like, I'm putting in the work. I've worked out for all these years. Now I have my nutrition in check. Why isn't the freaking scale moving? And what I've learned over my years of coaching is, to be blunt, it may never. And usually my follow-up question is, what does that mean to you? Right? Why is that so important? I don't say that in a judgmental way. I've been doing this long enough to know why. The answer is the brainwashing of diet culture, right? We believe that's a measure of success. But if you can sit here and tell me my clothes fit better, my energy's through the wazoo, my sleep's better, my measurements are better, you are checking all the boxes, your body is changing. It is working. Hallelujah, it's working. Why do we feel like it's not? Because the scale isn't moving. And the answer is because that's what we've been told is the measure of success. And I am here to wipe the slate clean and tell you it is absolutely not, especially if you are a worker-outer. So, with all that said, how do we use the scale? I'm going to give you a few options because there's no right, wrong, better, best. There is a better, best depending on your mindset. So I'm going to give you options based on that. If you are someone, this is the boat that I'm in. I have been doing this for a very long time. So when I say science is always going to science, biology is always going to biology, that is a very easy pill for me to swallow because my brain has a ton of proof that it will always work, right? If I spend less money than I save, I will get wealthy because math is always going to math. I know that if I'm tracking my macros or eating intuitively after tracking my macros for a period of time and training my body, which is my story, I know what to do. I know that if I eat a certain amount, then I'm going to gain weight. If I go under that amount, I'm going to lose weight. If I'm pushing my muscles in the gym, the scale is going to go up and my muscles are going to get stronger. If I stop working out, I'm going to get a little flabbier. I'm going to lose muscle mass and I'm not going to feel and look as tight and in tone. Like, I know it to be true, just like I know if I spend less than I save, I'll get wealthy. Like, it is just a fact of biology in this case. So for me, I have not owned a scale in 8 to 10 years because I don't need one. I don't even take measurements because I know when I put on my clothes, I know how I feel in my body. I know which direction I'm headed in. And I know what to do about it. And that is a very realistic goal. You don't have to have done this for 10 years to get there. You can put in some time and consistency and you will get there. You can read your body, especially I think as women, we tend to be more, that's a big generalization. I apologize to any men listening. For in my experience of working with a lot of women are very intuitive. We tend to be tapped into our bodies. We can feel and see these things and it is accurate. A lot of times we gaslight ourselves, but with time that will go away. So if you are someone who has complete faith in the process, which not everyone does because it takes time to trust, right? Hashtag bigger life statement, throw away your scale. You don't need it, right? Math is always going to math, science is going to science. That's not comfortable for a lot of women. If it is, that's the one that I suggest because your life will be a lot easier. When I talk to even my friends and they're like, I go on the scale every single day. I'm like, that sounds exhausting. Like, why would I put that stress on myself? That sounds like I'm hyper focusing on something. And I don't mean that judgmentally to them. I know why they do it. Again, I won't keep repeating myself, but you know the answer there. But it's just, it is not a thought that takes up space in my head because I've mastered this skill. So I don't need to think about that. Now, it doesn't mean I don't ever think about how my clothes fit or my weight, right? There's definitely times I'm like, ooh, we've been going out to eat a lot. Like, maybe we calm it down. Maybe I track for a few days, right? It's not that my head lives rent free of all this stuff, but getting on the scale every day is not a thought that crosses my mind. And that frees up a lot of mental capacity. And that takes time, right? That it takes time to trust. And I've been doing this long enough to recognize that's not for everyone. What we suggest for our members who are kind of in the gray area is get on the scale once a week. Pick the same date and time. So Monday morning, after you've gone to the bathroom, before you put anything in your body, do it then. What we're looking for is long-term trends, right? If we see one number on Monday, the first of the month, and then the next Monday at the start of the next month, then we do it. Then we're looking from one month to the other, right? You could do it weekly, just again, same time, same day, after the bathroom, before you eat. We're looking for long-term trends, meaning monthly trends, typically. In fact, inside Ignite on our weekly check-ins, there's a part that asks for weight. And we literally say in our check-ins, if this is messing with your head, don't answer this question. Put your scale in the closet. Don't answer this question. We use it because what our coaches are doing is in their notes, they're looking for trends. They do not care week to week if there's those 1 to 6 pound fluctuations, because we know there will be. What we're looking for is at the end of each month, which direction are we headed in? We already know the answer to that because biology is going to biology. But my point in sharing this is that we even say in our check-ins, if it's messing with your head, put it away. So to get back on track here, if it messes with your head, do it once a week before you eat, after you go to the bathroom. Boom, jot it in a notebook, put it away, use it for long-term trends. We do have women, and this always impresses me because I just think it's rare. We have women who can get on the scale every day, and because they've done this work and they've fully embraced those fluctuations, they can stay in a place of curiosity and use it as data. I'll give you one of the clearest example of this is years and years ago, back when Ignite was a one-woman show. One of my best friends at the time went through the program, and she's a very data-brained human. So she was like, I actually like getting on the scale every day because it's reinforcing. Check out this mindset shift. It's reinforcing what leads to those fluctuations. So she would have conversations with herself and with me, because I was her coach back then, of interesting. Yeah, the scale went up 3 pounds today. And that makes sense because I went out to eat last night and I had a cocktail. And I know that alcohol can be super inflammatory plus restaurant food. So yeah, it makes sense that it went up 3 pounds. Let me stick with my macros, drink some extra water today. Boom. Sure enough, next day, there it is. It went down, right? So she was reinforcing the brain wiring that the scale's always going to fluctuate and you can't always do this, but most times she could figure out the reason why. Oh, scale went up today. Interesting. Yeah, I did legs yesterday. I did an intense workout. There's probably inflammation. And then there's always those nice surprises. Sticking with this example, the same person, she went to Mexico on a family vacation for, I think it was 4 or 5 days. And this was pretty early on in her program. So she was nervous about it. She's like, I'm going to take time off tracking, when I'm just getting going. She'd had maybe like a month of solid tracking, maybe 3 weeks. And I had the conversation we always have, if you've heard this on the podcast, if you listen before, of like, I love when people go on vacation because you're building trust with yourself. She went to Mexico. She drank tequila, or mezcal was her drink of choice. Didn't track, came back, scale dropped a few pounds. Boom. Because when you're doing this consistently, your body will respond. So I share that story to say there are women who have fully wrapped their brain around the fact that there's always going to be fluctuations, and that becomes really powerful. Talk about stepping into your power and rewiring your brain. Now it becomes, yeah, that makes sense. If I track what I did yesterday, of course the scale fluctuated, right? The caveat to that I'll add is it's not always perfect, right? There will be those days where it's like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I did all the things yesterday. Why is this happening? We can't measure everything going on in our body. So all that to say, there's no right, wrong, better, best. If you're someone who's really stuck on the scale, the biggest takeaway is use it for long-term data. Understand that the scale fluctuating 1 to 6 pounds every day, it's always going to happen. There is no such thing as perfect here. Even if there was, it would still happen because there are so many things going on under the surface that are impacting that, from salt to workouts to bloat to inflammation to everything we talked about. At the end of the day, the scale does not solely measure fat. I will always come back to this water visualization because I think it's a powerful one. You step on a scale, the force of gravity goes down, the number on the scale goes up. Explain to me how scientifically that is pulling out how much of that is fat, how much of that is muscle. Side note to that, these scales that you get on at home that claim to pull those apart, not true. As of the time I'm recording this, The closest I've seen are those like inline body scans that some gyms, some doctors have. They are not 100%, but they can show you trends, right? Is your muscle mass going up or down? Is your body fat going up or down? But these at-home scales that you step on, explain to me how that's working, right? Those are not accurate. Take them with a very, very light grain of salt. When you step on a scale, it is measuring the force of gravity pushing down. There are 100 things that we could list. We listed about 15 of them here that are impacting that force of gravity. When we can fully embrace that fact, we can start to emotionally separate from the scale. Math is always going to math, science is always going to science, and the scale is always going to fluctuate. So the work becomes, and we do this individually with our members, or coach and each member have this conversation. What do I need? Here's the holy grail. What do I need to stay consistent? If getting on the scale every day is causing me to second guess myself, and am I wasting my time, and is this working? We need a different relationship. We need a different pattern with how we're getting on the scale. Throw it away. Get on it once a week and use it for long-term data. Or if you really want to get serious about this, do the mindset work so we can start to rewire our brain to see those patterns that are impacting the scale. At the end of the day, there are a million signs from our body that will show us this is working. The number one way to self-sabotage is to be hyper-focused on the scale. We have to get away from diet culture. The scale is not an indicator of fat on your body, not solely, and it is always, always, always going to fluctuate.